So a few weeks ago, I saw Spider-Man Into the Spider-Verse. Needless to say, I loved every moment of it, and I share the opinion of many people in saying that it's easily the best Spider-Man movie ever made. Sorry, Toby. The animation, the storytelling, the unique score, and my god, the animation! But I know everyone has heard how good Spider-Verse is, and me making a review of it is almost pointless as I don't think I can bring anything new to the table. However, I still really want to talk about it, since it's one of the few movies I can't stop talking about no matter how many times it's already been brought up. Spider-Man is one of my favorite superheroes of all time, and seeing this movie in all of its glory has made me feel like a kid again. But it isn't just good, it isn't just a decent popcorn flick, and it certainly isn't just another entry in the ever-growing wave of superhero adaptations that we're now government mandated to watch. It's now surpassed the genre and entered into the echelon of important. So why is Spider-Man Into the Spider-Verse so important? Well, funnily enough, almost every single one of this movie's aspects makes it important, just because of how so damn good it all is. I won't be getting into much spoiler territory, but I do suggest that you see the movie to not only understand my points better, but also to support the movie itself. I also want to say that these qualities aren't what makes Spider-Verse so good. Spider-Verse being so good is what makes these qualities important. Now, before I start this, I want to make one thing clear. I am not that critic. Seriously. I'm not the guy who parades around with glee of every instance of inclusion, racial allegories, or progressive alterations every time it's even implied in a movie. I am very apathetic about those kinds of things, and I even find some recent movies' attempts at it very intrusive and trite. But that's only because of how poorly it's been implemented into a lot of movies, since it always felt like the filmmakers trying to score some Tumblr points, at least when Tumblr still existed. In Spider-Verse, however, the subject is so beautifully integrated into the film that it's not only a subtle point that the movie hints at, it's also one of its strengths. It bathes itself in the idea that anyone can be Spider-Man. Now, I know this sort of thing has been a subject of contention for a long time, especially in the recent decade of filmmaking. So I always point people who want to watch an actually good movie about inclusion and character direction to the 1998 Disney film Mulan. I've actually thought about making a standalone video about the movie itself, but knowing me, the mere mention of projects that I'm working on curses them into never getting released. Mulan falls under the same level of inclusivity that Spider-Verse does, and its narrative is beautifully crafted to make a point that no one else seems to be able to replicate. It took me a long time to figure it out, but I think I can finally make the proper distinction. Movies nowadays make the point of anyone is allowed to be whoever they want. This statement itself is why movies about inclusivity now feel so half-baked and jarring, because this statement is inherently selfish despite how morally good it seems. I'm not saying it's a bad message, I'm just saying when it comes to a movie that has a protagonist that the movie is trying to convince you is selfless, it kind of feels off-putting. Just because the protagonist is doing something that they would do nonetheless. Not really for other people, more for themselves. But Mulan doesn't make this point because in the movie, it's not about her doing what she wants to. Mulan isn't becoming a soldier in an army because she wants to and the world told her no. It's about Mulan saving her ailing father from suffering on a battlefield where he is sure to die. Sure, the movie presents her as an outcast and a bit odd, but unlike some movies today, that isn't the point. Mulan's only thought is, I need to save my father, even though I might not come back alive. Spider-Verse is the same way. Miles is at first enamored by Spider-Man and wants to do all the cool things that he does, but he realizes that being Spider-Man is so much more than that. Miles naturally becomes a Spider-Man because he cements his ideals because he realized, I need to be Spider-Man because there are people that need me to be. This is why I find the statement that new movies make, anyone is allowed to be whoever they want, no matter what the world thinks, so vacuous and plain. Mulan and Spider-Verse make the statement instead that anyone with the willpower and the resolve can achieve greatness and do good, and when the world needs you, you will be able to answer the call. I believe this is the statement that more movies about inclusivity need to nail. It's not about Mulan being a woman, and it's not about Miles being biracial. It's about protagonists that no matter what the odds are, no matter what the struggles are, they get back up for the sake of others. This is an extremely important distinction to make, and what's more important is who it's addressing. The second thing that's really important, despite being seemingly very simple, is the rating. The movie is rated PG. Now, when I went to see this movie, I was in a theater with a group of kids, which I presume were on some sort of school or extracurricular excursion. I was also in a theater with a woman who both had a sickly cough and had never heard of theater etiquette in her life, but that's unrelated. Now, why is it important that kids are seeing this movie? Well, let's sit back and remind ourselves of the grand decade this has been for comic book adaptations. We're seeing tons and tons of new heroes being brought to the big screen, and even more experimental movies like Deadpool, Logan, and arguably Venom are being adapted. A good chunk of these movies are fantastic and offer wonderful storytelling and comic book action. But here's the problem. All these movies are rated PG-13 and up. Now, I'm not saying that kids younger aren't seeing these movies, that's just incorrect. How when the first Spider-Man came out, my dad actually got me out of elementary school so we could go watch it, because Spider-Man is my favorite hero, because even though I'm arachnophobic, he's red and blue, and I like the colors red and blue. But it's important to notice that the MCU and its contemporaries are made with blockbuster-level storytelling that older audiences can enjoy. However, what kids will see in these movies more often than not is people with semi-colorful costumes hit each other sometimes, and then talk about some stuff they can't understand. Hell, I'm 24 and there are some Marvel movie plots that I cannot for the life of me break down. In Spider-Verse, the plot, despite being so initially complicated, is extremely easy to follow. Giant Man is building an evil machine that could blow up the entire city, and the spider people need a mechanical goober to stop it. Little kids are not only kept in mind when the movie was made, but it was tailored to be simple on a first viewing and complex on further analysis. It doesn't section off a ton of time explaining each and every spider person because at the end of the day, the origin doesn't matter. The audience immediately accepts that they became Spider-Man for their own reasons, and that's all people need, especially kids. But something else to note is that despite being given a simplistic plot, the movie isn't kiddie-centric. There are dark moments, people die, and tough decisions have to be made. That's why I think it's even more important that it's a kids movie, because it does get rough for these characters. Life can get rough, that's just a fact, but that's the point the movie is making, and I'll get to that more later when we talk about arguably the most important aspect of the movie. Every morsel of this movie is easy to follow from its plot and character progression, and what aids it is the spectacular animation. I know it's good, you know it's good, so why am I bringing it up? Because the third thing that's important is its experimental CG style. In this age ruled by Disney Pixar and Illumination's marketing explosion of the year, it's easy to get lost on who makes what. Now, I never had a problem with computer animation. It's naturally where things are going, and I didn't really expect them to be much different, only to get better at textures and detail. But Spider-Verse is so obviously a love letter to animators, comic book fans, and even amateur artists that love a good aesthetic. There is so much passion and dedication into how this movie was visually designed, and that in and of itself is important. It's so vibrant, colorful, and the action scenes, despite being a goddamn explosion of fists and action lines, are easy to follow. After me being the only person on Earth who was extremely disappointed with the CGI fest that was Spider-Man Homecoming, the pure force and pressure that this movie exerts at the right moments is breathtaking. These characters swinging from bright orange treetops to the soft navy blue skyscrapers is just incredible. Which is why whenever I see people saying that they chop the frame rate purely for cost and effort reasons, I get genuinely upset. Sure, chopping the frame rate might have been easier on the cost, but every single frame is made with care and affection for Spider-Man and his swinging antics, and I can't see how people can take that any other way. What's also so important, but also kind of bittersweet, is that this style of 2D animation on top of CG isn't new. In 2015, Blue Sky Studios did the same thing with their Peanuts movie. I also saw this movie and I thought it was really enjoyable. The movie captures the Charles Schultz style and is made with the intention of imitating the comics as best it can, and it nails it. Now, here's the issue. The movie cost about $99 million to make and made about $250 million at the box office. Sounds great, right? That's more than double the production cost. Well, the production cost doesn't include the marketing budget, and while not everyone is Illumination who puts well over $500 million into marketing, most companies chip in a pretty penny to get the word out. So it's possible that the movie made a lot less of a profit than initially seeming to. And that was the issue before, that these high-concept experimental CG films were well received by critics and audiences, but for whatever reason they don't make their money back. This is why you only see movies like this once every few years, as disappointing as it is. Even at the time of this recording, Spider-Verse is just barely operating at a loss, which is as disheartening as it can be. But now it's not little old Blue Sky making these. It's the financial and filmmaking juggernaut Sony that's behind the wheel of this. Sony more than ever has the money to burn and a faithful crew to execute plans for even more Spider-Man. Hell, Sony's already come out and said that they plan to do a Spider-Gwen spin-off film. To which I replied with, yes! They put in the time to make this movie work. Just look at the bonkers development this movie had, and now that they figured it out, they sure as hell will make more. And that's the important thing to remember here. They're still willing to make these types of spin-offs even if they initially operate at a loss. In today's day and age of filmmaking and any other industry, that is insane. Now that Sony is chipping in to give experimental CG a go, maybe even more studios will try it out, and not just have interesting animation as a one-off gag. Now, all these aspects are important, and on their own in any other time, they would supersede this final quality. But in our day and age of superhero movies every year from a bunch of different studios, this movie does something that is the most important out of any other: passing the torch. Peter Parker is Spider-Man. He's always been Spider-Man, and he always will be. That's the idea that every moviegoer out of the last 16 years has had. Sure, he'll cry a bit and be a little bitch sometimes, but he's always going to get up to save the day. But that's what Spider-Verse so boldly and shockingly suggests in our era of superhero bonanza. One day, he might not get back up. One day, he might just throw in the towel for good. One day, Peter Parker will be a bitter old man that is scared of any change. One day, he might just take being Spider-Man for granted. Who will be there to pick up the costume in that time? With the phase that the MCU is in right now, we might be seeing some superheroes getting killed off, and have them being replaced by new people like they are in the comics. Passing the torch has never been fully seen, let alone sold, in a movie before. And certainly not with a character as cemented in people's minds as Spider-Man is. Miles Morales was undoubtedly the most important and the most risky thing to get right in this movie. Forget being a well-known character, he hasn't even been in the comics for a full decade. For all intents and purposes, in the comic world, he's a newbie. Now, I haven't read the comics, and I only know him through other people and from the Spider-Man game that came out a few months ago. From the description that people gave me and his interpretation in the game, I really only saw him as Black Peter Parker, and it seems a lot of people had the same impression when he first debuted in the comics. As I said in the first section of this video, I was extremely concerned that his biraciality, him being half African American and half Puerto Rican, would be exploited for the sake of half-hearted representation, and his character would only go so far as to constantly remind the audience of his heritage. Within the first 5 minutes of Miles' introduction, every single worry I had was blown away. He isn't just Peter Parker with literally a different skin. He's extremely unique in his interactions, his interests, his hopes, his worries, his parental figures. Dear God, his parental figures? A superhero character that has actual competing parental figures? That's unique itself. He isn't Peter Parker who's constantly wondering if he should quit being Spider-Man. He's Miles Morales who's trying to live up to the enormous job that is Spider-Man despite the struggles. The movie doesn't take the usual route and spend the first act getting his powers and becoming Spider-Man immediately. It takes the whole movie in order for Miles to become his own wall crawler, and that's exactly what this movie needed to do. When Miles is faced with overwhelming adversity, deadly villains, and uncontrollable new powers, it's all the more impactful, inspiring, and important when he finally dons his own suit and becomes the web slinger in the best scene in the movie. This movie does skip a lot of character backgrounds and admittedly rushes a bit for things I wish were spent a little longer on, but one thing it absolutely spends the most time and care on is Miles Morales and his journey into becoming a hero. Not into becoming Peter Parker 2.0, not into becoming yet another cog in this growing superhero film network, but into becoming his own friendly neighborhood Spider-Man. Peter Parker one day won't get back up. Gwen Stacy one day will throw in the towel, and hell, even one day Miles will hang up the suit. But the story that the movie so expertly tells is that Spider-Man is a symbol that always gets back up. Every single one of the qualities I just listed in this video builds towards this final message. Maybe you feel you've been cheated in life. Maybe you feel that you have unbearable burdens placed on your shoulders. But so long as you have any strength or willpower left to do what you can, you have the chance to change that. And maybe it won't work. Maybe it won't turn out the way you hope. But so long as you have the courage, the wherewithal, the will to struggle, you have the power and the right to make that decision. And that is why Spider-Man Into the Spider-Verse is so monumentally important.
You're on your way.
When do I know I'm Spider-Man?
You won't. That's all it is, Miles. A leap of faith.
Hey guys, I know it's been a while since my last upload, and it's hard to say whether I'll be returning to a more stable schedule. I know it's kind of weird because I just got new music done by Sir Meow Music for both the intro and the outro. I really wanted to do this video. Spider-Man is one of my favorite things, and I felt like this movie being so goddamn good was really important for me to talk about. So yeah, when this video goes up, I'll see how it does, and depending on how it does, maybe I'll try to return to a more stable schedule. But for the near future, I'm gonna try to do videos that I really only have extreme interest in, because otherwise I have this problem of not really finishing the videos if I become half-hearted about it. And it's more of, as soon as I become more half-hearted about it, the more errors I see in my scripts and my video editing and a whole bunch of other stuff. It's more of that. It's not like I want to stop doing videos. It's more of the less confidence I have in a script, the more I see its errors, and I really want to go back and fix it, but I don't have the time to do that. That's really what's been holding me back all this time, is my constant need to go back and change things. And once I change things, I can't find the time to implement those changes. But I know if I upload a video without those changes, I'll feel like it's incomplete. Thank you guys for watching. Thanks for watching this video. And if you haven't seen Spider-Man Into the Spider-Verse, go see it. Do it. Or I'll find you, and I'll eat your chickens. Those ones you have in the back, you know. Not in the freezer, live chickens. I will take the live chicken and just bite